Hello and welcome to the channel Hawkstar's Faces of Death. Sorry if the intro gave you a bit of a fright, it was intentional. Some people like that kind of thing, others don't. But anyhow, welcome to the channel. This is brand new. My other channel's Hawkstar's Exploring. I've always been one that likes to do research on a lot of things, especially history. So I thought I'd give my hand a go at this. And today's topic is the Black Death, aka Bubonic Plague, which was probably the biggest natural disaster in Europe, if not the world, in respect of disease caused by fleas from rats, basically. So we're going to delve into this and talk a bit about it, and hopefully maybe have a debate as well in the comments, get your thoughts and opinions on this. So without further ado, let's crack on. So the Black Death, it mainly had four names that was given to it. It was either called the plague, the pestis, the pestilence, or the plague. Other people gave it other names, obviously like the Black Death or the Bubonic Plague. And depending on what time period or where you were in the world, depended on what they gave the name for it. So, what time period and where in the world did it start? So, according to this map, they say 1346 is when it originated, and it would have been on the western side of China during the period when the Mongols, the hordes as they called them, would have been conquering China with a vast army. So it would have been during that time period, that green spot that you can see, in 1346. But what's even more crazy is how it came to Europe. In 1347, they already knew that in western part of China, already 20 million people had died from this disease. Even so, 13 ships left the Black Sea port for the Sicilian port in Messina, and that is how it blew up in Europe. Aboard them ships was a lot of rats, and infested on them rats was fleas that had the disease. Within days of them ships arriving in port, the rats had already got off the ships into the city, and the fleas had already started jumping on pets of people, and people themselves started biting, and the plague then started to spread rapidly. And immediately, having the residents already knowing about this plague, started to pack their belongings and leave the port town for other places in Europe, which again started the spread even more. This was understandably a very scary time for all, and every time it hit a certain area, the people immediately fled. But by far the biggest spread of the disease was trade around Europe. And in only a couple of years, by 1350, it had travelled as far north Europe as Norway, Sweden and Russia. Nations that didn't have a lot to do with trading tend to get away with the disease. A fine example of this was Poland, and the bigger trading countries suffered the most, especially those with the biggest urban centres, and over a 10-year period, Europe lost 50% of its total population to the death of this disease. With no ability to combat the disease or even find a cure, people turned to religion. As with anything that is not fully understood, anybody that at the time was not a Christian, or if you was a Romani or even a Jew, you were looked at with suspicion. Like with so many times throughout history, the Jews were looked at as the cause of the problem and were rounded up and burnt alive. So how did they stop this spread? How did they slow it down to the point where they eradicated it? Well, one basic thing they did was they just stopped trading. They closed the gates to the main city's entrances, and unless you was a resident, you was not getting in. Not even a trader, not even to earn money. They stocked up on what they had, and they just locked the city walls down. Now, there obviously was some good things that came out of this due to the fact that 50 million people over Europe died, which was the fact that peasants were in high demand when it came to work, which meant that they was now earning a higher wage, and also the land that would normally be farmed by that amount of people that was lost, 50 million, now started to be reclaimed by nature and turned back from farmland to beautiful natural land. Eventually, the virus almost completely died out. Never ever went, but it got to the point where you'd only hear a case of it now and again, and it was very quickly contained to stop the spread. But history has a way of repeating itself, and it re-emerged in the 1500s and again in the 1800s. Now, it is possible that smallpox and leprosy could have contributed to these numbers, as they were outbreaking as well during this period, but it is not consistent with the symptoms of the Black Death, so therefore the 50 million death still stands as a record. Here's an example of what 50 million people actually means. So if you have a look at this list, it can mean the whole country of South Korea, Uganda, Sudan, Spain, Argentina, Algeria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Poland, Canada, Morocco, and even then you'd be sure of the 50 million. Or just look at it this way: Mongolia, Moldova, Uruguay, Puerto Rico, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Albania, Jamaica, Armenia, Gambia, Lithuania, Qatar, Botswana, and Namibia. You combined all them countries together, that is just shy of the total number, 50 million, that died during the Black Death. It's a crazy thing to think 50 million people can die from a disease, and we all like to think that it will never happen in our generation. But if you just think of COVID, that just came out of nowhere, and we had to lock the whole world down just to defeat it, and even then, it's still around. And even now, the Black Death is still around, and some forms of it, there is still no cure. I'm Hawkstars, Faces of Death. Please subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good time and be safe.